want to touch on how, first off, your vulnerability in your memoir and sharing your story is truly something to behold. And I appreciate you sharing the way that you did. One thing that really stands out is how you just don't give a flying four-letter word when people come at you. And that is something from afar that I truly adore because I am sometimes in my feels. However, I'm going to run through this super quickly in case someone has quite literally woken up from a coma and have no idea who you are. In September 2017, that's when you called Donald Trump a white supremacist. And then ESPN put out the statement where they were like, hey, we addressed it with Jemele, blah, blah, blah. And then the freaking press secretary, who is now the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, said your comments were outrageous. She called what you did a fireable offense, which is just like, from afar, again, if you're watching this, like, fuck off. Like, who cares? Who absolutely cares? Why are you weighing in on ESPN? But we've seen how this White House certainly, treats these things. Trump tweeted about the ratings because that is quite literally, there's two things he's upset with, maybe three: his hair, his money, and ratings. Those are the three, not his kids. But what I want to touch on is a piece for Slate that Joel D. Anderson wrote, because I found this to be rather interesting. It was an ESPN talent gathering of 2017, and part of the reason for the meeting, he wrote, was, he said it, partially, not fully, was your tweets. And then a new social media policy was released, and he wrote, and I quote, "It all had the feel of a slickly produced high school pep rally. That new policy mandated that we avoid outright partisanship and seek permission before commenting on political or social issues on the air or on social media." What was that experience like for you?
Well, I will say there's a slight amendment to that in the sense of that town hall meeting was actually planned before I did,
Oh,
before I called Donald Trump what I did on Twitter because I
oh.
was supposed to be a part of it. That's how I know. Is that they saw that with the tone in the country, it changed, a lot in 2017, and that there were quite a few people who, quite a few members of ESPN's, broadcasting team that really wanted to understand or wanted to say things about what was happening in the country. And it was becoming kind of a real slippery slope. Add on top of that, the fact that at that point, ESPN being perceived as this liberal company that is politically biased and, anti-right wing. And, they made it seem like ESPN was the kid at school with like purple hair and skate culture. Like ESPN's literally never been that. And so there was a lot of conversation about whether or not ESPN's social media guidelines were reflective of the times, or should they more reflect the times, or like what was the parameters and what could people say, what could they not say, and like just trying to get a handle on it because even though mine was the most publicized incident, they had certainly had other incidents where you had ESPN talent stepping into political waters and it becoming a big story. I mean, like Kurt Schilling, that happened with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's said a lot of things about politics, and there was a lot of blowback from some of the things that he said. And so it wasn't purely directed about me, but it became about me because then I had the most public incident. So I was actually supposed to be at that meeting and wasn't because I believe it happened when I was on suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I think that's and even if it hadn't, I don't know if I would have been the person in the room that should have been there. Because obviously I would have had a lot to say about it. But I think that's why it's so interesting to see where ESPN is now in this moment, because a lot of, whether it be understood or not, a lot of the supposed directives and the things that they were saying you couldn't do then have completely gone out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually glad because I do understand that Disney has a bottom line to protect, but also understand that there are, they're not just broadcasters and talent that works at ESPN. These are people who are participants as American citizens. Like they're here too, and there are going to be some days where things are happening in the country, and you don't want to always be tweeting about who's going to win the AFC East,
Right.
And so I think they have come to understand that these political times are a lot different. I also, to be frank, think that it helps that they have the people who tend to speak out politically that I've seen, that there is a combination of right-leaning views and left-leaning views. I mean, I think probably mostly now is right-wing or
Hmm.
right-leaning, I should say. Those, views have been, and Stephen A. has kind of represented both. So it's more down the line, and because of that, I think it gives them the permission and the comfort to lean into it a little bit more than they probably ever have.